Hello, I am Xarkun. This is World of Warships Legends. Takeo Kurita on the screen, Sims, and Bay as inspirations. He's the commander I'm using on the Tier 7 Japanese gunboat destroyer Akizuki. But I should also show you this build with Togo that I have been testing around and I do like it. We're going to be on Two Brothers, Dos Hermanos, Capture the Base mode in the Akizuki. And as you probably know, I have featured this ship once before on my channel in the form of a community replay that was sent in by my colleague ChiliGames17, who, as I'm sure many of you know, is an excellent player, certainly better than I am. I was a little bit concerned when I put up his video that my inevitable follow-up in this ship, playing it myself, would not quite reach the same spectacular heights as Chili's game. He, after all, did get a Xarkun and scored 150, 160,000 damage, I don't quite remember. Well, there will be no Xarkun in this game, but there will be a lot of damage. In fact, more damage than was done in that game. Thanks in part due to some inexplicable choices made by the enemy team on this flank out here. We've got 3 battleships, and there is a destroyer somewhere as well. Now, this isn't going to be a review on the Akizuki, but I will talk about the stats very briefly. It's got 22,220 hit points with the Sims build, which puts it toward the higher end of the destroyer spectrum at Tier 7 in terms of hit points. Very robust amount. It's got 8 100mm guns that fire every 2.8 seconds. I think my build on the Fletcher has those guns, which are 127mm, firing in 2.4 seconds. So, Fletcher, a little bit higher gun caliber, a little bit faster rate of fire. Still, these things are a good rival to that. The high explosive Alpha Strike is something like 1,200 damage, and at the moment I can't remember the armor-piercing one, although both the high explosive and armor-piercing shells can be effective. It's also got torpedoes that reach out to 9.5 or 10 kilometers, only 4 of them in a single quadruple launcher. Still, they are usable, more usable than the torpedoes on most gunboat destroyers throughout the game are. So at least that's nice. And of course they are Japanese torpedoes, so they hit hard with an alpha strike of something like 20,000. Concealment, I've got it down to about 5.4 with this build. And, I should briefly pause to talk about the differences in the commander builds. Kurita offers an improved rate of fire. Without his observant range skill and the skill in the third row that increases the firing range and rate of fire of the guns, these shoot at something in the range of 3 seconds. Now it's down to 2.8. So there is that to be said for Kurita. And I do think these guns benefit from decreasing their rate of fire and from extending their range. They have fairly flat shell arcs. These aren't like Fletcher shells, which take a long time to reach their targets. They seem to have pretty good shell velocity, flat arcs, and they don't take a long time after exiting the barrel of the guns to reach the ship they're aimed at. So that is very nice. As a consequence, I think I have the range of these guns out to 12.2 or 12.4 kilometers, which is great. Maneuverability on this thing, though, pretty abysmal. 730-meter turning circle, which I think rivals the Tashkent, and that is fairly clumsy. Also, the speed on this thing. I think it's got a top speed of 33 or 34 knots on this build. I am using the Epic Booster of Battle Propensity flag to increase the speed and the gun range. So the stats are colored by that little green flag that you can see on the forward mast there. In any case, very slow. It's kind of like the inverse of the Tashkent, whereas that destroyer is a very good destroyer at zipping around the map at high speeds in excess of 40 knots, harassing battleships at long range. This ship is much more stationary and slow and sluggish, but its rate of fire puts it above the Tashkent in terms of being able to deal damage, even if its alpha strike on the shells is not quite as impressive, and even if the penetration doesn't quite rival the penetrative capabilities of the Tashkent's much bigger 130mm guns. These shells do get a different coefficient than most high explosive shells, whereas most of those you take the caliber and divide by 6 to get the armor value that the high explosive shells can penetrate. With these, you take that and divide by 5. So these can penetrate, I think, up to 20 millimeters of armor, which means they are great for doing damage on battleship superstructures, lighting fires, melting cruisers if you hit them in the thinner armored parts of their ship. Not necessarily Baltimore, but plenty of Tier 6 cruisers. Even so, we lit a fire on that Baltimore out there, and I think that fire is going to be enough to take him down. The sluggishness of this ship does make it a little bit difficult to be an open water kiting type destroyer. Nevertheless, sometimes the speed, or the lack of speed, works in your favor, and the enemies vastly overestimate just how fast you're going, or they lead you right on and you can kick in or kick on the brakes and avoid quite a bit of incoming fire that way. Plus it has 2 smoke screens with a fairly long duration, and sitting inside of those can allow you to rack up a lot of damage. Now, for whatever reason, this push toward the enemy base, all of these guys are ignoring me. I have been spotted this entire time. I'm laying into this Gneiss now, just smacked him with a torpedo, got the high caliber metal. In fact, I think it was 2 torpedoes, and he is on his way to the bottom of the sea with all of this high explosive firepower raining down on him. I did light a fire. That's going to send him to the bottom of the ocean, so I'm switching to the Jean Bart right now, who also is not really paying attention to me, although it looks like he might turn his guns in this direction. Really, he should. Honestly, this thing can pump out damage so quickly with a combination of its guns and its torpedoes, which most people don't seem to expect in many situations, that you really need to shoot at this destroyer if you spot it and you have a firing solution on it. It can't be allowed to go around raining down terror like this. We've already racked up 155,000 damage and counting. We did have to stop our campaign though and throw down our last smoke screen to give ourselves a second, because we are being pursued by 2 enemy destroyers. Now, these guys have pushed into our base. The friendly team on the western flank, composed of 2 battleships and the other friendly destroyer, is heading back to the base to defend it. Somebody has shots on the Jean Bart, presumably also on the other battleship in there, so they should be able to reset them, and they won't be in immediate danger of flipping the cap. That means I probably need to deal with the 2 destroyers behind me, and in terms of destroyer versus destroyer fights, the Akizuki has no rival at Tier 7 apart from the Fletcher, and even the Fletcher it can give problems to. For example, this particular Fletcher decides not to shoot at me, which is suspicious. I am shooting my high explosive at him. We've already taken him down to nearly our level of hit points, and we'll get him there soon. I, of course, have many more guns than the Fletcher has. He's got 5, I've got 8. They might be lower caliber, but they've got a quick rate of fire. They're just melting him. As he turns broadside, I will switch to the armor piercing. He's not quite broadside enough that I am still getting a couple ricochets, but you see there we finish him off with the AP. Benson, other destroyer out there, he is shooting at me with only his front 2 guns. I can show him the stern of my ship and get 4 guns firing on him, which is a nice advantage. If you find these American destroyers, they're going to point their nose at you. They've only got 2 guns to shoot you with. If you point your nose or your stern at them, you've got 4. Now the Benson smokes up, I launch torpedoes in his general direction, and I stop firing. I am at a fairly low amount of hit points, 2,500 now, so this Benson can finish me off in a couple of salvos, especially if he turns his ship to get all of his guns firing on me. There I drop spot, torpedoes enter his smoke screen, but either he is pointing his nose at them and able to slip between them, or he's moved out of that position because the torpedoes do miss. But in the interim, we have racked up 183,000 damage with 3 kills. We could nearly get a Kraken. Iowa out there, he's just within our firing range, so we're going to decide to open fire on him. You got low health targets like this Iowa. The Akizuki can finish them off extremely quickly, and the rate of fire is just terrifying. I think we had about 3 salvos in the air before the first one actually landed on that Iowa, and we are able to take him out very rapidly. Now that just leaves the Benson left, Kraken up for grabs. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen because I just can't aim. I think I was a little bit too excited shooting at this Benson, and we've got the friendly Lightning out there who is actually going to end up taking him out because I can't quite dial it in. In any case, this is a fantastic ship. I love it. It is nothing like the rest of this line from the Minakaze to the Shiratsuyu. Those are kind of mediocre torpedo boats in my opinion, but this thing is worth it. It is the most fun you can have in an IJN destroyer, in my opinion, and I would highly recommend you grind to it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Goodbye.